Rebecca, you've been a psychic medium for 20 years now, and you say you want to normalize the paranormal. What do you think is the biggest misconception about it?
It's been very sensationalized with all the movies, The Sixth Sense and all the movies and TV shows. It's not as simple as just, for me, in my experience, seeing dead people walking around. And, it's much subtler. It's a skill that takes practice, and it's like a muscle. You have to develop your psychic ability in order to clearly and easily connect with the dead.
And you connected for the first time when you were journaling at a bookstore in college. I was particularly excited to hear about this because I love books. This is such a booky podcast. So can you tell me about the first time that you had that energy take over you?
Yes. Okay. So I was what, 19 years old, and I'm supposed to be studying for a marketing exam. And instead, I was having a bad day, and I've always used journaling as a way to process my feelings. And so I just started writing my feelings out. And all of a sudden, this energy started literally pulling my hand across the page, and I could hear the words in my head faster than I could get it out. And it was this very poetic, kind of sing-songy energy. It was not my words. Okay. And she introduced herself initially as my guardian angel, and then she handed it off to my dead grandmother, Babe. And for an hour, this energy wrote through me pages and pages of information. And what was happening is they said, "We are here in response to your cries for help." And I had been praying for months before. Every single night I would cry myself to sleep. I was going through a depression, and I was sleep eating. It was a nightmare. I was sleepwalking and eating in the middle of the night as a way to stuff my feelings. And so I was just at wit's end, and I was asking for someone or something to help. Well, sure enough, it was answered by the dead grandmother and guardian angel. So they give me this download of, "We are here to help you, to heal you from the inside out." And they said, "We know you think you're crazy and making this up. So we're going to give you 3 specific things to run by your father," who at the time was living, because it was his mother. And they said, "Ask him, and you will know this is real." So of course I left that journaling session shaking. I called my dad and I read the whole thing. And sure enough, he said, "Oh my God, I don't know how you're doing this, but you talked to my mother." Because in those 3 things, nobody knew the answers to those, but one of them was how he found her when she died, and she died by suicide. And so he had never told these certain details to anybody. And so for me, I needed that to know I wasn't crazy. This was real, and that
You
it
didn't
was
grow up
safe.
with kind of believing in paranormal or
No.
understanding any of that.
Not at all. I was raised in a conservative Jewish household. We did not talk about psychics or woo-woo stuff at all. And we weren't that religious, to be honest. I believed in God and something bigger, but this was not familiar. And so the bottom line is, my grandmother also was not a warm and fuzzy person while in life. So the fact she was coming through now completely opposite and trying to support me and love me really threw me.
How did it go from being an experience you had to being your life's purpose?
That's a great question. So I fought it initially because back in when was this? 1997 to 1999. This is like, nowadays, I feel like talking about this is a lot more accepted and common. Mm-hmm. But back then it was very taboo, and it was like coming out of the closet. So once this all happened, and I did this 18-month like mind, body, spirit workout to heal myself from the inside out, every day connecting with dead Grandma Babe and my guardian angel. Well, once I was done, they had said, "Now it's time for you to go use this gift and help others." Well, I got my advertising degree at that time, and I wanted to pursue that. So I tried, and nothing was working. And so that's when I wasn't getting jobs, like nothing. So I believe in, if things don't flow, there's a reason. And so that's when a friend of mine said, "Just go do this." At that time, I'd moved to Detroit, outside of like a suburb, West Bloomfield, Michigan. And a friend said, "How about this? You go read a few of my friends, like strangers, and test it out." And so I said, "Okay, I'm terrified, but I will try this. I don't know if it's going to work for other people." Well, sure enough, it was working. And so then I surrendered. I said, God, you are my publicist. If you want me to do this, bring it to me, because I am not going to chase people down. And so I set up shop in a West Bloomfield coffee shop. And I started seeing people one by one in the back of that coffee shop. And 3 months later, the head of the Detroit Jewish News came in. I didn't know that at the time, but I did this reading for her. And she was so blown away. She said, I want to do a story on you. And it turned out to be a few months later, the front cover, which then turned into my business.
Wow. How did your friends and family react?
Initially, everyone literally thought I was crazy and maybe there was some mental health issues. Like, people didn't know what to do with it. My father, again, who was alive at the time, was my biggest cheerleader. He so believed in me, and he was on his own spiritual journey. But I got a lot of pushback from family and friends. And the bottom line was, I knew in my heart this was something real, and it was healing and meaningful. I know for me and for what I was witnessing with so many others, that I felt inspired to continue on despite what other people thought.
You had an inner knowing.
I did.
You talk about something called team spirit, and you say your dad is on your team spirit and that he's constantly showing up for you behind the scenes.
Yeah.
What is team spirit, and how does your dad show up?
So team spirit, it's an energetic support system that we have in place before we're born. So it's made up of departed loved ones, angels, spirit guides, ascended masters. And these are beings that are, in a sense, your cheerleaders, your guides, your greatest coaches. They're there behind the scenes to assist you while you're doing your work here in Earth School. And they are always there available. It's like a doctor on call. You just page them and they're right there, but we have free will. And so we have to give them permission, which means invite them in every day. And the other point I want to make here is, just because somebody died doesn't mean they become a part of your team or a spirit guide, because it takes proper training for these, departed loved ones to know how to responsibly guide us. Okay. And so my dad, it took him, he's been gone for 16 years. He just recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, became a guide. He had a lot of work to do, and he's done it. And the way he shows up, I have all sorts of signs. And this is such a cool story. The other day, so he's responsible for a part of this book, and the book being like, heal your unfinished business. And my husband and his father have a lot of unfinished business. And he was the inspiration behind encouraging my husband to reach out to his dad, to make peace with him. And so one morning we had his dad over for breakfast, and I just felt my dad's presence there. I could tell he was so proud my husband's making the effort. And then we had to leave to go pick up our daughter somewhere. And we took a really weird route to get there. And we ended up behind a license plate that had my dad's name on it, Shelly. And so I looked at my husband. I'm like, see, you were supposed to have that breakfast this morning with your dad. He's patting you on the back. I mean, I've never seen a license plate with my dad's name on it. So
do they show you these signs to make you know that it's real? Because if you feel that it's real, you maybe don't need the sign.
So I don't need the signs, but for me, it's breadcrumbs along my path to keep me excited and inspired to know that I'm on the right track in that moment. We all need that, a little encouragement. And of course, I believe. In fact, it's beyond belief at this point. It's a knowing. But spirits love giving us signs, because it's this back and forth dialogue that we have with them to know that we are in alignment with them and our higher selves.
So much of this is rooted in intuition. And I know in so many of your books, you talk about how intuition is our most powerful tool. So what does intuition mean to you?
So intuition is a connection to our higher self and our higher guidance. Okay. We are all born with it. It's that spidey sense that we all have that you can't make sense of necessarily on paper, but you just feel it or know it in your bones, right? Intuition is like that internal GPS system, okay? And it helps you navigate your way through life. And so if you acknowledge it and actually use it, it saves you from making the wrong choices, and it helps you move forward in your life with a lot more grace and ease and less pain and struggle.
How do you access it when you feel like you haven't heard from your inner self in a while?
It can be a little rusty. You have to still your mind's voice, your ego, all the monkey mind that we all experience at times. You have to find a place of stillness and quiet in order to tune into what I was saying in the very beginning, the subtle impressions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So intuition, it's very quiet, but it's very simple and it's very direct. But you have to be present. So if you're lost in thoughts of the past or obsessing and worrying, future tripping about the future, you're going to miss it. And that's the whole purpose of meditation.
Mm. Can meditation be different things for different people? Like, can yoga be meditation? My mom always says she's feels meditative on a bike.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Spirit talks about this all the time. Moving meditation, honestly, I think is an easier way to start because you're not setting yourself up for failure by trying to sit in lotus position and be still and stop your mind. Instead, you're moving energy, you're breathing, you're doing yoga, you're running, you're hiking, your spin class, whatever. Moving meditation is such an excellent way because you're naturally, when you breathe, you're getting present, you're opening and expanding your energy, and then you make space for the intuitive downloads. Okay, so out of the blue thoughts and impressions that come to you, that's intuitive guidance.
You wrote something in your book I really loved, mostly because I love the idea of asking ourselves questions to get deeper, better answers. You say, get in the habit of asking yourself, from what frequency am I making this choice?
Yes. So everything we do, we have free will, free choice. And you can choose from light or you can choose from shadow. And so it's another way of saying that you choose from love or you choose from fear. Okay. And we all have a shadow side. That's okay. But it's when you need to make important decisions or any decision, you want to line up and plug into your higher self and your higher guidance. Okay. What I call source energy, and call it divine spirit, whatever you want to call it, God. But when you are making a choice from light or in that frequency, you will always make the right choice.
So, in What's Your Heaven, the little synopsis says, in order to live with more intention and honesty, identify your biggest lessons and embrace the personal homework you'll have to complete to become the person you were meant to be. I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned honesty in there. And I think it ties into the light and shadow work that you
Oh
just
my
mentioned.
gosh. Yes, because we all have an ego and our ego gets defensive and we go into judgment. And, when you're in shadow, you're a lot of times in avoidance or denial. Okay. And you're not doing an honest self inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important that you align with your higher self and get out of your ego self so that you can at least get neutral. Neutrality is where you really want to be because from there you can tune into the truth.
I love the simplicity of asking, am I making this choice from love or fear, from shadow or light? It's just a really easy question to ask yourself.
Oh my gosh, it's so easy, but how many of us forget to do it?
Exactly.
We
I'm
react.
thinking about that.
Yeah, we react instead of respond. When you react, you're in fear. When you respond, you're coming from light and love and your higher self.
I think our emotions can really guide that. How can we tune in to our emotions more?
So this is a big part of the book because I actually included Dr. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness with all the emotions on it from the bottom of the totem pole, which is shame, and victimhood, to the top, which is enlightenment and love. Our emotions are our guidance. So what Spirit has taught me is get out of your head, drop into your heart. Okay. And try and feel in the moment what you're feeling because your feelings are your truth. That is guidance. Feelings don't lie. The mind will make up stories and false beliefs, but the feelings are true. And so that is intuitive guidance right there. So it's really making it a point to say, okay, I'm in my head about this right now. I really need to stop this analysis paralysis or projecting my thoughts, opinions, and judgments onto this or this situation or person. I'm going to drop into my body. I'm going to breathe into my heart. And from there, that's where the stillness comes in. I'm going to check in with how I feel. And your feelings, if you're feeling resistance, frustration, irritation, anger, any of the lower fear-based emotions, then you're in your ego. You're going to get an answer from shadow. So we want to get neutral or something above and connect with that higher energy of love.
As I'm listening to you, if we separate the paranormal part of what you do, so much of it sounds like enlightenment to me. What have you learned about what's important to you in this life from speaking to so many people who are in their past life?
Yeah. What I have learned and what they say every single day is they come forward to all these regrets about operating from their ego. And ego, Wayne Dyer once said, it's edging God out. And when we do that, that means we are trying to do it alone, go it alone. And one of the most important messages I hear is we are not alone. So I have 7 lessons, 7 fundamental lessons that Spirit taught me that are in this book. And one of them is based around your team spirit. You are surrounded and supported. And these spirits, they said, if I would have only known then what I know now, that I have this energetic support system, like we talked about earlier, to cheer me on, to give me clarity when I fall off path, to give me signs, to deepen my authentic faith and trust that this is real and this matters. That I think is the most important. And then also, we pick up in death where we leave off in life. So whatever unfinished business you have here, it's going to follow you. And unfortunately, I know little too much about suicide because my father and his mother both died this way. And I obviously work with countless number of people who have experienced loved ones who have died this way. And what they always say is that they wished they would have found the right help, professional help, personal help. They wish they would have found the courage or the strength to tackle their unfinished business, to really dig in and heal and do the work, because it all follows them. Everything follows us, and we're going to have to face it at some point. It's always easier to do it here in the environment in which it's created versus waiting till you die.
I've read a few books about what the yogis believe, and it's almost like we come back as humans to finish that business, and we keep coming back until that's complete. So for instance, if I really want to be a mom in this life and I don't get to be one, I'll come back in my next life, really is my purpose to become a mother. Is that close to what you feel? Or
it is. So first of all, you don't have to reincarnate, but most souls opt to. It's a gift. It's a true privilege because there's more souls that want to incarnate than bodies available. So if you're here in a body right now listening to this, see it as a gift. You have a purpose. Isn't that amazing? And so anyways, yes, you come back to heal and balance karma, whether it's with yourself or with others. Okay. And there's another reason is we have this thing called intergenerational homework. And so this is like family legacy stuff. Okay. Transgenerational patterns or lessons that are passed down that need to be balanced and healed. And so sometimes, well, a lot of times what's going on is you're here to clean up the karmic mess left behind by a parent or a grandparent. Okay. And so we'll keep reincarnating until we come in and get it right, check the boxes on that karmic to-do list so that we can grow and evolve, not only individually as souls, but collectively as soul groups. Okay, so the people, the soulmates, our family, our friends, the people in your life who you have a deep connection with are part of your soul family. And we travel and reincarnate in soul groups in and out of multiple lifetimes, playing different roles to help teach each other and learn from each other.
Just so people can have an example, if it feels a little bit obtuse, is it in this life, my father could have been the mayor of my town in my last life, and in some ways we had an important relationship.
Yes. So yes, it can play out a lot of different ways. So for example, let's say in this lifetime, your father was an abuser. He's abused you, whether it's physically, verbally, emotionally, mentally. Okay. And maybe he's just playing out the role you asked him to play because in the last lifetime lived, you were the abuser. And so you need to flip flop places, trade sides to fully appreciate and integrate both sides of the lesson because you didn't fully get it. And so this takes us, when we start to reframe it and say, oh, I'm learning through opposites, okay, and polarity and contrast, whether it's something in this lifetime or trading roles in another lifetime, it's always because we agreed to it on some level. We asked our soul group members to do this because it challenges us to learn the lesson. And so that takes you out of victimhood. When you realize, oh my gosh, I signed up for that. And I'm just here to heal and balance karma with my father, whoever it is you're playing that role with. So it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And that puts you in the driver's seat of empowerment so you can co-create your life in a meaningful way.
And you have an opportunity to heal it. And it's up to us if we decide if we want to or not in this life.
Yes. And the problem is that we fall asleep and we forget that we created this soul contract. So before we're born, we create a loose blueprint or script of the lessons we need to learn. And usually most souls are working on anywhere from 2 to 5 really big lessons. Okay. And it's the common like themes or patterns you notice over your life that you're going through. And by the way, you can figure that out in the book, but I also have a free quiz on my website people can take to help them identify what that is. So you realize, wait a second, I scripted all of this. So this is not happening to me again. I'm not being punished. It's not bad luck. This is truly for my soul's growth and evolution that I agreed to. And so just knowing that, you take your power back.
I think my first entry point to spirituality was with Oprah. Do you hear that a lot from people?
I do. Yeah, I mean, she's amazing. She's one of our greatest teachers here.
So there are people like her. I heard someone say this once about Kobe Bryant. I think there are Barack Obama, certain people in our culture that help raise our collective conscious. Do you believe in that? Are people placed in those positions for that?
Yes, they are. And there's a lot of what we call light workers, star seeds. These are enlightened beings on the planet who are taking one for the team. They are here more for the growth and evolution of the planet and others. They're here in service to others more than necessarily their own self. Okay. Doesn't mean like we all still have our homework to do, but then you pay it forward in service to others.
There was this video years ago I watched her and she said, the universe speaks to us always first in whispers. And if you don't pay attention to the whisper, it gets louder and louder and louder. And if you don't pay attention to that, it's like getting a brick upside your head. What are the types of signs that we need to pay attention to so we don't get a brick upside our head?
I write about this example with my stepdaughter who wasn't getting it, and she kept getting speeding tickets, and then it evolved into a minor car crash, and then it turned into a almost fatal car crash. And so if we don't pay attention, like it doesn't have to be a loud roar. It can be a whisper. And the whispers, that's the whole point. You have to be present enough so that you don't miss it. The signs are always going to be in the present moment. So let's say you get a feeling, I shouldn't be dating this person. And you don't listen. And then you go through, you ignore it because your mind is saying, oh, you're being judgmental or too hard or whatever. And then all of a sudden, a month later, you get another red flag. And then that turns into a bigger, wake-up call, whatever that is. And then if you don't listen, it's going to turn into a really giant, scream in your face. And God forbid, it's not like deadly, but it can be. And so the whole point is we have the opportunity to get it right with ease and grace. It doesn't have to become such a big drama. But the problem comes back to, again, we're so in our ego. We are so lost in our heads, in our mind thoughts, and not tuned into our inner guidance, our soul knowing, or we're not trusting it. I think doubt is a really big thing. We start to doubt, well, I can't make sense of why I got this feeling, so the guidance comes through feelings, strong, overwhelming, like you start noticing these patterns. You're like, that is not a coincidence that 3 times in a row, I end up with a man child. And I feel like I'm mommy taking care of this guy. Like maybe there's a pattern here going on and I need to look at this. And so I think it's just a matter of being aware enough to recognize the signs that are coming and the patterns that keep repeating themselves are not coincidence.
What's the most powerful sign you've received?
Oh my God, that's okay. Well, the most powerful was back in a time when I needed it the most because I had the most doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's usually why it's the most impactful. I shared with you how this all began. My grandma, my angels were talking to me. I thought it was crazy, but regardless, I did the work for 18 months. I healed myself. I was back to a healthy, balanced state of mind and being.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, my grandma said to me, you will meet your husband, and his name is Ryan, and he's going to give you a rose. And that's your clue to know it's him. And in one journaling session, she said, and by the way, his birthday is 9/24, September 24th. So again, we're back in 1999. This is like pre-Google, okay? So I just had this information, didn't know what to do with it. I put it away for a good year. Well, fast forward, I'm in a good space. My mom then introduces me to this guy she had met when I was away at school and really felt strongly I needed to meet him. On our second date, I realized his first name was Brian and his last name was Rosen. So I'm like, wait a second. If you drop B from Brian, you get Ryan. You drop N from Rosen, you get Rose. So I'm like, that's crazy, but am I making it fit? And then I went and dug through my journals and I found the 9/24. And so I called him and I said, this is crazy, but I have to ask you, is your birthday September 24th? And he said it was. And that's when I knew. So for me, that sign was alleviating any doubt, remaining doubt, to help me fully believe that I am being divinely guided and that this is destined.
So are we assigned to people if that's the case?
So what happens is we have primary, secondary, tertiary soul groups, okay? The primary are the people that are like your besties and, the soulmates you keep reincarnating with, whether it's romantic or not romantic, the parent-child relationship, those are your primary. Secondary are people that you have a season or a chapter with, but not a lifetime. And then the tertiary would be like the barista at Starbucks that was in your life for a brief moment in time, but they really impacted you. Okay. And so I don't know if we're assigned it, but we all agree to it. Mm-hmm. Okay. That, hey, our paths are going to cross at this point. And because of free will, what we do with it, we may embrace that interaction and experience and learn the lesson, or our ego might rebel and reject it. And if it does, if we say no, that door closes. But I promise you, it circles back around down the road because it keeps coming back, whether it's with that person or in another relationship mirroring the same exact pattern because you have failed to learn the lesson. And once you say yes to it, embrace it and heal or learn the lesson, it goes away.
So if you had not been ready to meet your husband and that door closed, what would have happened?
Most likely it would have circled back around with him at a later date because we're no longer married, but we're still in the same soul family. We're really close friends.
Yeah.
And we have children together. So we're co-parents together. And so I know that he and I had karma to bring those two boys in. Okay. And so I am almost certain if my ego would have been in fear or shame, or I'm not worthy and I can't do this, it would have circled back. He probably would have been persistent and a year later tried, or, maybe I moved to another city and we bump into each other at a bookstore in another city. I mean, that is not coincidence. That is synchronicity. That is the universe waking you up to, this is supposed to be happening. So are you going to embrace it? Or are you going to resist it?
You write within your struggle is your biggest opportunity for healing and growth. And I love that reframe. How do you think we can reframe all of our challenges as that, even when in the moment it's hard to look at it that way?
Yeah, it really is hard when you're viewing it through the lens of your ego or a fear, right? It's really saying, what is this here to teach me? there's a gift in this, and not why is this happening to me? That puts you into victim. But what is this here to teach me? And then taking what is and flipping it. And so I have a whole program where it's like, take the false belief, like I am not enough, and flip it to, no, I am enough. I am perfectly imperfect, and I am enough right here, right now. Okay. And then reprogramming your subconscious and conscious to really start to believe and then integrate that false belief into a new belief.
I've heard you talk about an intuitive hit versus anxiety and fear, which probably feel somewhat similar. Is that the case?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate the two. In the book, I actually outline a whole section on how to know if it's a divine guidance or your mind, a mind thought making it up. And so the simplest way is intuitive hits happen fast. They usually aren't repetitive. They come from out of the blue. You don't know how it hit you. It's either a feeling or a thought, or just something that is just in your knowing. You can't explain it. Okay. Versus a mind thought that is, or a feeling that is trailed. It's like you woke up feeling anxious, and then your husband said something that triggered you, and you get even more anxious, and then you have a deadline at work and you get more anxious. That's trailed. It's been following you. Versus you wake up feeling great, and you're driving to work, and out of nowhere you have like butterflies, like you have this really intense anxiety in your stomach. It's like a visceral response. You're like, where did that come from? And then 5 minutes later, you find out something awful happened to someone close to you.
It's that you may not recognize it, but it's inside of you already.
It's there, and it doesn't make sense conceptually. So on a mind level, forget it. You're not going to figure it out. But just on an intuitive level, it's a knowing, inner knowing.
Have you seen that technique called tapping that's gone viral on social media?
Oh my gosh, this is part of my book.
It is?
Yes, tapping is a big part of my program, where you take an affirmation and then you use color, run energy, but then tap, because tapping helps you to integrate these beliefs into your being. Affirmations alone, I don't think work.
So where do you tap? Because I've seen people do their forehead. I've seen their hand.
So I have a chart in there that shows you, in your, listeners can find this because it gives you the points and it runs you through. But really the karate chop point is where you do your setup statement, and you just kind of tap lightly with 2 or 4 fingers. And you just say, even though I'm feeling so stressed out, I deeply and completely accept how I feel right now. And so you're releasing resistance. You're leaning into it and saying it's okay. And then you tap through the points. Okay. And now some people, they just tap like the gamut point right here, in between the pinky and the ring finger at kind of the top of the hand. That's like a stress point. You can tap there. But if you really want to do it correctly, you want to like look at, and it's really easy once you figured out the points, because it alters your nervous system. Okay. And it really does change that stress response in your body to be at peace, relax, and then you're able to integrate the new suggestions.
One of my favorite aspects of your work is the idea of raising our vibration here on Earth. What are some simple ways, maybe 2 or 3, if you can share, that we can all raise our vibration on a daily basis?
Nature seems to be spirit's number one go-to. Like if you're having a bad day, get out into nature. Nature, the Schumann resonance, okay, the vibration of the planet, it's just always neutral and high vibe. Okay, so if you were to go put your feet on the ground, earthing is a whole technique. You walk barefoot on the earth. It literally changes your entire energetic being. It drains you of stress. It raises your vibe naturally. All the negative ions found in nature, especially the mountains by ocean, natural streams and rivers and lakes. Okay, so that would be the first thing I would say. Second would be meditation, but it can be exercise. It can be moving meditation. I think exercise, honestly, outside, you're killing like 3 birds with 1 stone, right? Because you're getting out into the high vibe of nature. You're breathing and getting present in your body. You're moving energy and you get into a zone. So whether it's just walking or it's riding a bike But if you can do that immediately, you're going to come back from that feeling really good and high vibe. And then another thing I would say, spending time with people who light you up and bring you joy, whether that's a beloved pet or child or best friend or lover, it doesn't matter. If you feel at ease and you light each other up just by being together or having conversations, that's a really simple way for both of you to raise your vibe.
Thank you. I really like those. Okay. You talk in your book about everyone having a different version of heaven. What is your version?
I have many versions, but my hands down number one is being anywhere warm and sunny by the ocean.
And so when you say heaven, what does that mean? Because I think it has a lot of meanings to people.
It does. So exactly, when spirits come through, sometimes they'll say, hey, my heaven's like being at the beach. And another will say it's like sitting at a blackjack table in Vegas. Heaven is a feeling. It is not a place. Sometimes the place brings you the feeling, or the thing brings you the feeling or the experience. But heaven is a state of being, okay? It's a feeling. You know, as with anything, when we're trying to manifest, we're not really trying to manifest the thing. I mean, we are, but it's the feeling the thing brings us that we're after. So any feelings of peace, relief, happiness, joy, you know, contentment, all those feelings are feelings of heaven. And so that is what heaven is. And that's why the book is What's Your Heaven? Because you can bring heaven to earth now. You don't need to wait until you die to find those feelings. But it's really easy to get caught up in the frenetic, fear-based energy of this 3D earth world. And so that's why you've got to figure out what your tools are and use your tools, mind, body, spirit, on a daily basis so that you keep your vibration high and you plug into the feelings of heaven.
I love that you mentioned manifestation because I think it's almost been co-opted by the internet at this point. And I love that it's so wonderful. I mean, I think the internet probably brought it to me. It's wonderful that everybody knows about it, but I do think that it's maybe been watered down a bit. What is your version of manifestation?
Manifesting for me, based on what my guides have shared works best for me, is when I am able to feel what I desire in the future as if it's already here. Okay, so it's really taking the dream, goal, whatever it is, and feeling worthy of it and receiving it now. Okay, and thanking, like in the present tense, thank you for this perfect loving relationship, or thank you for this beautiful home on the ocean. It's the feeling sinking into that. And if you can, because honestly, your mind and imagination doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not, what's here and what's yet to come. So it's about feeling your way into it now as if it's already happened. And I think a really important point here is feeling worthy of receiving it. I think so many of us, like, we want that and we say it, but at the end of the day, we still don't have it because we aren't receiving. We're not allowing ourselves. There's an unconscious part of us that's holding us apart from that because we don't believe we deserve it.
There's some sort of blockage.
There is. And that's the book. The book is get to the root of your blockage, clear it, because you are worthy and deserving. Everyone is meant to feel heaven here now. And the goal is to allow yourself to receive it and not hold yourself apart and not wait until you die to have that.
Actually, that was my next question is, I think you could have written a lot of different books. Why this one now?
This is so, I love that you asked this because this book originally was a manifestation book and then it was an abundance book. And I'm like, no, this has been overdone. This is not it. I wrote this book because I was, two reasons. One, during the pandemic, I was marathon reading. I was seeing 30, 40 clients a week, every week for 2 years.
Oh my God, because everybody was like, what's happening in my future?
What's happening? Everyone's having these like crises and at a crossroads because you were forced into this universal timeout to reevaluate everything in front of you. You can't run away from it. And so the pattern I noticed was people were struggling with the why behind their struggles. Like, why am I unhappy in my marriage? And I have everything on paper. I should be so happy, but I'm not. Why am I unfulfilled with this career? It's because it's not your purpose. And so spirit, they're seeking spiritual guidance, a broader non-physical perspective to shed light. Okay. And so I just noticed this pattern, and I started reading people's Akashic records, which basically stores that what we talked about, the soul contract, what they signed up for. And I was able to identify, you're around 38 to 40, aren't you? Yes. And you are struggling in your marriage. Yes. Well, guess what? It's supposed to be coming up because you're not learning the lesson, or because your partner's not learning. So and then from there, I was able to help walk them through a process on how to shift and transform that and move past their struggle. Okay. And so that the whole program here is this book. The other reason was my husband had been struggling his whole life with patterns of dysfunction in his family. And his dad's at the 11th hour of his life, Parkinson's, 81 years old, and they have a lot of unfinished business. And my husband's like, you know what? I don't want to take this to the grave. And I know my dad doesn't want to, and I certainly don't want to repeat this in my next lifetime. So I'm going to sit down with him and have an honest conversation. I said, hey, let's come up with a list of all the things I hear the dead tell me they regret and wish they would have done, and sit down and interview your dad. And so in the back of this book, I included in the appendix, the list of questions you can sit down and work through, whether it's a literal death, like somebody's on their deathbed and you want to clear the air, or you're going through, let's say, a death of a marriage, or a death of a 30-year career, or you're becoming an empty nester. And before your kid goes off to college, you want to sit down and do a life review. So really what this is a life review before you die and have to do a life review, because there's still time to clean up your karma and heal whatever needs to be healed so that you can find peace here now. Because like I said earlier, if you have to take this with you to the other side, it's going to be a lot messier and more complicated than if you had the courage and willingness to do the work while you're here.
It's fascinating that you say regrets in death, because I interviewed a rabbi and he's done thousands of eulogies. And I said, what do you understand about death that the average person wouldn't? And he said, never once has he spoken to anybody who regretted something they did. On everybody's deathbed, the regrets are something they did not do, which is exactly what you're talking about.
That's exactly it. It's, the regrets coming through from the other side aren't, I wish I would have taken more vacations, or I wish I would have, it's more like, I wish I would have had the courage to apologize or own up to my part in the deal with that relationship. I wish, so they're acknowledging what they didn't do. That in hindsight, it was so obvious, but they were so blinded because they were so in their own way. They're too close to it.
Yeah, or it's the ego.
And so it's invaluable. It's the ego, and the ego likes to rebel, resist, reject, ignore, deny. And so that is the importance of getting humble and aligning with your soul and your higher self so that you can take an honest inventory and be accountable, because all our thoughts, words, and deeds, we have to own once we cross over. So let's do it now. And think of what an amazing place this world would be if we all operated from that place.
Somebody said to me that they think that humble gets a bad rap because sometimes the word humility feels like you're making yourself smaller or you're self-deprecating. And I think it's actually like the biggest, puffiest thing you can do.
It is, because your ego doesn't need to be stroked. When you're humble, you are able to be kind versus being right. Okay. You don't need so you know how people make giant donations anonymously? That's a humble gesture. They don't need the accolades or acknowledgments.
Yeah.
Because they know in the end, it's between them and God or the divine. And so humility is one of the greatest strengths you can have. There's nothing small about it.
I have a few rapid fire questions for you. So
yes.
What is a motto that you live by?
Be you, do you, and the universe will bring it to you.
Oh, I like that. I've never heard that.
Spirit told me that one.
That's good. Spirit is a poet.
Oh, Spirit is a poet. That's how this all began.
What is a book that you've read that you think everybody should read?
Journey of Souls or Destiny of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. It is. Have you read it?
No, I've never even heard of it.
So he's now deceased, but he is this famous therapist who did a lot of past life regressions and life between life regressions.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done tens of thousands of case studies, and it walks you through just about everything we talked about today on what before you're born, you signed up for this, and what it looks like on the other side, and what role spirit guides and angels really play. I mean, every question you could ever need to know is in that book. And the reason I say this, I suggest it, is because back when I was in college, just playing around with all this very new territory, I would get these meditations and I saw souls and soul groups as bubbles all connected. And then later, a few months later, I came across his books. And in it, he has a diagram with the exact same thing Spirit showed me. And as I read it, I'm like, oh my God, I was blowing my mind, because I'm like, this is exactly what I've been receiving from my guides. So I know it's based in truth, and it really helps paint a bigger picture to bring a sense of empowerment, but also healing to people if they're struggling around their life or a death. I think it's an excellent book.
It must feel validating when other people, you see like words or phrases of downloads that you receive.
Incredibly. In fact, just recently, my husband was rereading The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I actually quote him in my book. It's one of my all-time favorites. And the other morning, he's like, oh my God, he's saying the same thing you're saying, but in his own language. And in the end, it says heaven on earth. And he's like, he said, and I did not remember this. And I'm like, we're all saying the same thing because it's truth, and truth is simple. And when it's the truth, a lot of messengers are going to be bringing it through, saying it in different ways, because we all hear and receive things differently.
I like that. I don't remember that from the book either.
So the last chapter, I have to reread it, but pretty amazing.
So every episode I ask everyone a pretty smart question. These are in your mailbox right now, but because we're virtual, just let me know when you feel like stopping.
Okay.
What is the biggest sacrifice you've had to make on your path to achievement?
Time with my kids. You know, this job is amazing, but it's 24/7 because the dead people don't stop talking. And I love what I do. It's my passion, my purpose. I would be doing it no matter what. But it really does demand a lot of my time and energy. And I was doing this before I had children. So they knew what they were coming into. And the only thing that brings me a sense of peace about that is that they signed up for me as a mom and they can handle this. But
wait, what do you mean by that?
So meaning, okay, so we choose our parents. We choose our situations, our circumstances.
I thought our parents choose us. We choose them?
We choose them. Now, it could be a two-way street where they choose us, we choose them. We're going to play this role. You'll be mom this time. I'll be child. It was flip-flopped the last lifetime. But we sign up for it because there are lessons for us to either learn from them and or teach them. Okay. And so, again, going back to your question, it's like, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And I still, as any human, crave the time and love and connection with my family. But I am so often doing God's work that it takes me away from the other night, I couldn't go to my daughter's. She had a big project event, social cultural night at her school. Guess what? The nanny took her because I had agreed to a large audience event in person. I couldn't get out of it. And so it's worth it. But it's also that kind of, I feel torn sometimes.
It's a push and pull. Do you think it's affected them, or they understand?
No, my kids are amazing. And that takes me back to, like, they're so at peace with it. So for the boys, they have this amazing father and we co-parent so well. Like where I can't show up, he does. And so that, thank God, they have enough from both of us bringing different things to the table. And with my daughter, with my second husband, she was a miracle. And she's our teacher. She is like from another planet. She's angelic. She is strong. She's independent, and nothing bothers her. And so I'm like, you know what? She knew what she was coming into. She always says, I'm here to take care of you. Your dad sent me to take care of you. And
it says that to you?
She says that to me. And it's like she knew my dad, because the truth is he knew her before I knew her in this lifetime.
What is the smartest decision you've ever made?
Saying yes to that first reading in the coffee shop when I was a young 22, 23 years old, terrified to sit with another and start doing this. But I walked away from advertising and I felt the fear. I did it anyways. And look what it evolved into.
I've been asking everybody this since I was on the phone with uh, someone that I really respect. And I look up to him. And before we got off the phone, he said to me, "What's one thing that you think I need to know?" And so now I ask all my interviewees that, what is one thing that you think I need to know?
That you need to know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to ask Spirit because I trust their insight more than my own.
Okay.
Okay, so you just need to be reminded of you're a healer and you may not see it that way, but they're pointing to your mouth. And when Spirit does this, it means your soul's purpose, what you signed up for, is to use your words and the wisdom that comes to you and through you to comfort, counsel, guide, and inspire people forward in their lives. Look at this. You found a perfect platform to share your soul's gift with the world, but they're telling you now it's almost like you keep doing this, have zero doubt because this is what you're born to do, but it's how do you then bring it back to you? So filling up your worthiness cup, like how do you receive? Because you're really good at giving and holding space and putting other people in the spotlight to lift, them up higher. But now it's about how do you receive to lift yourself up higher?
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. So
Take
good to
good
meet
care.
you.
You
You
too.
too.